Hey everyone, Dan here. I just came out a pretty intense final season at Yale, and I want to share with you some advice that just might save you on tomorrow's exam. If you're watching this, probably don't have a lot of time, so let's get straight into it. First, you want to have a good mindset. By this, I just mean that you don't want to focus on how little time you have for tomorrow's exam or how cooked you are. It's better to think of any exam as doable and really just focus on what steps you need to take to maximize your score on tomorrow's exam. With that in mind, we want to move on to the next step, which is just to find a focused environment. Find a quiet, preferably private place where you can study alone or bring some friends along in order to just lock in, right? Make sure you keep the friend group small, maybe two to three people max, and make sure they're people that you can really focus and work well with without getting caught in random conversations or side tangents, because that will really detract from your ability to do well. Once you have that sorted, you want to move on to just a game plan. And by this, I just mean take into account everything that your teacher has told you about what's going to be on the exam, right? And using that information, you want to prioritize. Like if you have several exams, which exam is more urgent, which exam are you least prepared for, those things should be your focus. And with that out of the way, I want you to literally visualize everything that's going to be on this exam you're focusing on. By this, I just mean take out Google Docs, a piece of paper, a whiteboard, and draw out all the topics you know are going to be on the exam. Try to do this off of memory. It's a good way to actively recall what's going to be on the test. But if you can't, then you can fill in the blanks afterwards and just try to fill out that general outline as best as possible. You don't want to be writing essays, you don't want to be writing entire paragraphs on the board or whatever. You just want to focus on having a condensed outline of the topics that you need to know. With that roadmap set, we want to move on to at the actual studying, right? So for memorization-based exams, Anki, Quizlet, and other active recall resources are going to be the best tools out there. Ideally, you already have some flashcards that you could use and run through, but if you don't, you could easily just create this using AI like ChatGPT in order to have flashcards that you could use for active recall. Outside of this, I highly recommend you take advantage of things like a cheat sheet, which if you're given one, are really, really useful, right? Take complete advantage of it, put all the key terms or terms that you struggle with on the cheat sheet, and that will be super useful if you come at a point where you just don't remember it during the exam. Another pointer here is that if you have a friend in the group that's super knowledgeable about the exam content, have them run through a study guide or even just a general list of topics if you don't have one with you. This would be super useful because it not only helps them review the content, but it brings you up to par with what's going on and also allows you to ask someone who knows a lot about the content clarifying questions if you need it. Moving on to the next type of exam, which is a problem-based exam. This is your math, this is your computer science, etc. In these classes, typically doing the practice test or doing practice tests are going to be the best way for you to do well on this exam, right? This is especially because a lot of the practice tests are very, very similar to the actual test you get, or at the least tell you a lot about what the test is going to look like and what's going to be on it. However, you want to do this in a smart way, right? Don't just mindlessly crank exams. You want to go through the exam in a timed manner and then figure out what problems that you don't know or just generally struggle a lot with, and look at the rubric. What does the rubric tell you about the way these problems are graded? How does the solution typically approach it? Based on those, you want to understand the process. Don't memorize the numbers, don't memorize the answers. Memorize and understand the way the problems and your teacher want you to tackle the question. That way, when you get the actual similar question on tomorrow's exam, you're able to just do well and get most of the points, even if you forget little things, right? Now that you have the general idea of practice tests, you want to be wary of common mistakes. One of which is just to crank easy problems. There's a temptation to do like easy things and feel like you're making progress, but that's the exact opposite of what you want to do. You're wasting time. You want to focus on the problems you don't know and the problems you struggle a lot with in order to fill in those knowledge gaps and increase your score as much as possible for tomorrow. Now, that's about it for the actual studying, but that's only a part of the game, right? Because outside of studying, you want to make sure you're able to actually be in a good state to tackle tomorrow's exam. Now, this is pretty simple in the sense that you just need to make sure you're sleeping very well. Unless you're like a professional all-nighter, I would not recommend you pull like no sleep and just dive straight into the exam. Sleep will help you just like retain a lot of that information or at least regurgitate it when the time comes. Outside of that, it's just going to be trying to stick to a consistent routine, right? If you normally eat breakfast, don't skip breakfast, don't binge, just do what you normally do. That way, when it gets to the exam room and you're about to start taking the exam, you're ready to just crush it and do the best you can. And that's all I have for today. Best of luck, you guys. Till next time.